everybody. David Rice of Ignite DDS here as usual with my Colorado friend, Kevin Henry. How are you, Kevin?
Hey, Florida, I'm doing well. How about you, man?
Florida is A-OK today.
Well, good. And I know just up the East Coast is our good friend, Dr. Roger Levin, who's joining us. Dr. Levin, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you are a wanted man, and we really appreciate you being on with us.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you guys, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, you know, one thing that you wrote that has just received such incredible page views and feedback was on Dr. Bicuspid, where I'm lucky enough to be the editor. Dave's our clinical editor. But you wrote about the lessons that dental practices can learn from the 2008 recession. And we were hoping to get some thoughts on that from you today. And then obviously we want to push everybody to read Dr. Levin's article on this topic on drbicuspid.com. But first, I just wanted to throw out at you, which is a hot topic right now, and that's hygiene and hygiene production. What lessons do we see from the 2008 recession, maybe that today's dentist should be aware of?
Sure. Well, let me tell you how that came about. You know, as about 8 weeks ago when COVID-19 hit, Levin Group made a decision to pivot as a company and do everything we could to help the profession. And I find it unbelievable. This could have never happened and won't happen again. But as of yesterday, I participated in 64 webinars. So we've done our part. I've just said yes to everything, and our goal is to help everybody we can. But we also have a big data center, Kevin and David, as you know, and you know it's a really great data center. Unfortunately, 8 weeks ago, all the data became irrelevant. There is no data around COVID-19. So I went back 4 weekends ago, and did a really deep dive into the 2008-2009 recession, because that's the only evidence that we have. As you guys may know, before 08 and 09, no recession ever hurt dental practices. Economists said we were recession-proof, but that recession changed the game. So I did a very deep dive on the weekend, because weekends look pretty much like the week right now. And, you know, as a friend of mine said last Friday, oh, I'm glad it's Friday so I can visit a different part of my house this weekend.
Exactly.
So I did a really deep dive. I looked at the data and pulled observations, and we found a number of key observations, and that was only an economic recession. Now we're also going to have the health scare. So we have information that we'll talk about, and then we have information now from practices that have been open for 2 or 3 weeks and how they're doing. So I can update you on that as well.
Sounds great. And what did we see with hygiene production during the recession, and does it correlate with what you're seeing as practices are starting to open back up now?
No, it doesn't, but I'll explain why.
Okay.
So when the 08 and 09 recession happened, we got hit with an economic recession. There was no shutdown. There was no overnight crisis. It was quick, but it was a gradual roll into the recession. And we saw hygiene went very light. The average practice lost 8 to 9% of their patients. And within 1 year, 20% of dental hygienists were released from their positions. And I'm very sad to say that. I have huge compassion for everybody out there. But I do believe we're going to see that again. And it's going to occur, but not right away. And that's the difference. So Levin Group created a 3-phase timeline. You know, without data, I wanted to build models that we could apply our high-value strategies toward, both to help the profession. I've been lecturing openly on it, and of course, to help our clients. And the first phase is months 1 through 4. Now, the timeline has evolved as we learn more information. Every few days, my thinking evolves because things are changing so quickly. And months 1 through 4, we call pent-up demand. So unlike 2008 and 9, which was previously the deepest recession in United States history, now it's going to be the second deepest. This is already the deepest. We did not have pent-up demand. So practices right now are extremely busy. I can tell you our clients in some of the states that have been open for a couple of weeks are setting record production numbers, even though Levin Group projects that volume will be down 20% in practices as we're figuring out infection control. And there are a lot of strategies you can apply to change some of that and improve it. But even with the slowdown in volume, they're setting record numbers because of pent-up demand. But that can fool you. And in the first phase, hygienists are going to be more in demand than ever. You're going to bring in temporary hygienists if you can. People are working expanded hours to make up for all the patient appointments. An example is one client of ours I talked to yesterday. He's got 600 patients to reappoint. So they want to get as much hygiene in as they possibly can. But what's going to happen, and I've been warning about this when I participate in webinars, is in the second phase of the timeline, months 5 through 12, we're going to see a slowing and declining of production. That's where practices will have finished the pent-up demand. That's when they're going to start looking at production declining. We believe production will decline anywhere from 15 to 50% in practices. Now, why this giant gap? The answer will depend on how well they've prepared for new systems and scripting and strategies in the return to practice in COVID-19. My single biggest fear, and I do like to mention this to help people, is that practices will reopen and they'll change their infection control. David, you're doing it. You're adding steps, I'm sure, in your practice, but then do everything else the same way. Partly because that's what the staff knows how to do. That's what they know to do. And that's going to be a very negative effect if we don't see changes in the system. So I'm expecting 20 to 24% of dental hygienists will move at least partially or fully out of their positions. I'm sorry to report that. And then the full recovery, we believe, is going to be 24 months. The third phase that we call recovery is months 13 through 24. And I'll just end by saying these are projections. Any of this could be changed. The two biggest factors that could change the game would be definitive treatment or a vaccine. That would alter my timelines based on what we know today. And that's all I have to go on.
I like that. So, you alluded to, we know we've got to change our infection control game, the PPE game, but the practices that are really going to get hit hardest are the ones who don't change their systems and become better with their systems. Do you have a top one or two things you would say, okay, practice, do this now?
David, I just happen to have an answer for that.
I thought you might.
Yeah, we've actually identified, and I'll give you the top one or two, 63 strategies. We call them high value strategies. And I want to tell your listeners, if they want to do the single most important thing they can do, it's to create a one-page COVID-19 strategic recovery plan. And without taking time to describe it, if they'll go to our website, levingroup.com, everything's free. Our only objective is helping everyone that we can. Go into our COVID-19 Resource Center on the homepage. David, you might enjoy it. Sharp as you are, you might see a few interesting things. We have a lot of tools there to help people. And one is the COVID-19 Strategic Recovery one-page plan. Having said that, let me give you said one or two, I'm going to give you 3 key items that will help everyone listening. Great. Number one is reactivating your patients. Now, the word reactivation has a brand new meaning. It's any patient without an appointment. If you can minimize the loss of patients, that creates production. And our company, our firm, has always been focused on increasing practice production, but in a business turnaround, and that's what everyone is facing. Everyone with a practice is facing a business turnaround. It's a very simple formula. Production creates revenue, revenue creates cash, cash creates income. If you get more patients in, you have more production, and that will help you have what I call a faster, better, deeper recovery. Number 2 is expanded hours. In the first phase, expand your hours, evenings and weekends. As you guys know, I'm a dentist. I was 10 years full-time. Nobody wants to hear that. But for now, as I joke that we just had an 8-week vacation, the one that nobody ever wanted in their life. And right now, expand your hours, which does 2 things. It will bring more patients in, because you've got patients, David, that have used up their vacation time at work, used up their PTO. They're not coming in during regular business hours. And if you get them back, you've got a much better chance of keeping them. If you don't, they may fall away from you. Because in 08 and 09, which is the article, Kevin, we're talking about, many patients just stopped going to the dentist to save money. So that's the first reason for expanded hours. The second is more hours, more production, faster recovery, and better chance you will survive and you will be back into profitability in a reasonable period of time. but it's a new world. We need brand new systems. Our clients, we're streamlining and changing their systems for COVID-19, because as long as this lasts, you cannot go back and do things the same way. And I don't think we're ever going back to the same way again. So we're putting in payment plans. Now, payment plans, the problem is you don't always get paid. Not everybody finishes the plan. So because of that, people say, oh, well, why would I do that? And here's the answer. And this is from the business world. Sometimes you do things just to cover overhead because you've got to pay the bills. If you get 50% up front on a payment plan and you collect another 20, you're now at 70%. For most practices, that covers overhead plus some profitability. Remember, 0% of a great case is still nothing, and that's not good. And the third option is discounting. And we're recommending to our clients that a small percentage of patients get discounts that gives them the motivation to have treatment they need or want now. And again, if you discount 15% and you still have a 25 or 30% margin for profit or something in that range, that's far better than having nothing. So we've got to break out of our old way of thinking. I've been doing a lot of work on a concept called reimagining the practice, because I'll end with this. In a business turnaround, you do many fewer things. They're really simple to understand. They're hard to do, but they're simple to understand. Like we've been teaching our clients, there are only 8 key performance indicators that even matter, but you need to look at them every single day. There's no more weekly or monthly, because in a turnaround, you need data as quickly as possible so you can make the right modifications and implement the right systems and strategies to go forward. So I hope I didn't go on too long, guys, but that's we are.
No, you're good. I'm gonna ask you one final question, because there was one thing in the article that really jumped out at me. You mentioned that you can't cut your way to success, and how important that is. And I'd love to just have you finish with that thought and what you meant by that in the article, if you don't mind.
I was at a course at business school, and that was a concept I'll never forget. That, and I understood it, but not as well as I understood it in 2008 and 9. Because what happened was dentists were coming up to me at the end of 2008, because we were doing seminars, we could travel, everything was normal except for production dropped dramatically in dental practices. And they were coming up and saying, Roger, I cut my revenue, but because I cut my expenses, my profit was higher. Makes perfect sense. You reduce your revenue, you reduce your expenses by enough, you can have higher profit. And by the way, I won't get into this today. We're going to see more and more practices get smaller and more profitable and happier because of COVID-19. There are a lot of big practices out there that are wondering what to do with all their debt right now. So that was true. You could cut your revenue by cutting, lower revenue happened in 2008. That was the production factor. Then you cut your expenses. And to your earlier question, Kevin, even some of your staff, and your profit was up. That was 2008. But in 2009, those same practices saw profit decline, because when you cut, you can only cut once. And because revenue stayed down and expenses couldn't be cut further, that's when their profits started to drop. And that's when people stopped coming up to me and saying, guess what, my profit's up. And the reality of that, from all of that, was the realization that they didn't do anything to turn their practices back around. We didn't think of it as a recovery. We were just going to wait it out. I'm going to tell you this time, you can't wait it out. You probably can't figure it all out on your own. It's interviews like this or webinars or Dr. Bicuspid that are going to help people understand what you need to do, because this is different. A turnaround is totally different than normal times, and there's wonderful academic science behind how to do a successful turnaround, but we need people that understand what a recovery is truly all about.
True story. So friends out there, listen, data, track it daily, and we have some new systems if we're going to find success moving forward from COVID-19. Roger, thank you so much for your time. I know there's so much more information that you have. You mentioned we touched on 3 things out of what, 63?
Out of 63, yes.
Out of 63. So
those are the 3 top, David.
I'm getting old. Now, we're going to make sure everybody here who's watching has Roger's information. The Levin Group's been doing this for a long time. and been doing it well. So the numbers matter. Kevin, great to see you. Roger, great spending time with you. Everybody, have a great rest of your day. Let's do this thing.